What's up, red and white family? This is Adi from Gate 7 International, bringing you guys another deep dive. Maybe it's the last one of the season. Who knows? We still have the free agent transfer window that ends in a couple of weeks. So, still a few other things we might be able to look forward to with new players, but this is the last of the official January transfer window signings. We are going to be talking about today ZYMER BYTYQI, the Kosovoan winger, 26-year-old winger. Excited to have him here. A lot to talk about. And first and foremost, guys, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you enjoy the content that we're throwing out there, you like the deep dives, you like what's going on, you like growing the community. Every engagement helps the algorithm, helps us grow, and it helps us reach more and newer red and white fans. The community grows every day. So those of you that are engaging with us, thank you so much. For those of you that are just joining the party, hit the button. It costs you nothing, and it helps us grow the community to be the biggest that it can be and the biggest that we know Olympiacos deserves. Now, moving on. For those of you that are betting guys, like I said in previous shows, every deep dive we do, Champions League is around the corner. We're going to be hooking you guys up with the latest tips that we have, kind of building together as we always do, our using our player analytics and looking at the lineups, looking at the lines to try and help you guys make the best bets that you can. You can use our promo code GATE7INTL. That's GATE7INTL in all caps at betus.com.pa for a 125% deposit boost when you set up an account and when you make your first deposit. BetUS also accepts crypto. They take credit cards from most countries as well. So it's very easy to set up. They can take almost anything. So check them out and bet with us next time when we get started on the betting when Champions League, Europa League, and Conference League starting up. Now that that's over, before we jump into the deep dive, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Rezan Yetish, the journalist and TV personality that covers all sorts of sports in Turkey. She's joined us, if you guys remember, in the previous season when we played against Fenerbahce last season. Lovely having her. Some great insights for her. If you haven't checked out the teaser that Costa dropped already with Rezan's insights, go check it now. She is really a first-hand source when it comes to anything with the Turkish league and all of these players that we get rumored with and players that we even get that come from Turkey. So check that out. She does a great job. You can follow her as well on all socials. Now, the player that we're discussing today, without further ado, ZYMER BYTYQI, Kosovoan winger, as I talked about before, just turned 26 years old pretty recently, actually. His birthday is in September, so still got a good amount of football ahead of him. He's coming in at about 5'9", 176 centimeters, so literally just 1 centimeter smaller than Sergicanos that we just did the deep dive board before. 70 kilograms, 154 pounds, so about 5 kilos less than Sergi. So the build is a little leaner, we'll say. And in terms of the side that he plays on, he's usually a left winger, but you will see him sometimes drop deep. He plays as a mid, both left and right side, and as a right winger. So he's kind of played both sides. He plays a little bit of everything. Now, before I get into the player profile, I wanted to share you guys just a little bit about his story because his story is pretty incredible. Um, ZYMER his family were immigrants from Kosovo in the 90s to Belgium. He was born in Belgium, and then at the age of 2, his family goes and moves again to Norway, where he actually doesn't even start playing football until he's about 10 years old. And very quickly, apparently, his talent is realized. He starts at, like, a small regional club, but then he ends up getting brought on to, one of the first team clubs, and I'm gonna butcher this name probably, Sandnes Ulf. And they apparently valued his talent so highly, they wanted to use him as a first team player at the age of 14, but he was too young to play first team football. So he ends up just playing with the reserves until they can roster him when he's 15 with the first team. He eventually will make his debut for them in January of 2012 as a substitute. And that debut makes him the youngest player ever to make a pro debut in Norwegian football. And he'll hold that record until it is broken a few years later by a certain Martin Odegaard, who now plays for Arsenal. The same Odegaard that was previously signed by Real Madrid, never really used by them. But you see how fantastic of a player Odegaard is, and Bututsi had those accolades before him. So that tells you at a young age the talent that he had, where he was going when he was in Norway. So I wanted to give that story because it's a very interesting story. We see a lot of stories from a lot of different players. A lot of it's just they grew up here. I mean, he immigrated across countries and then started pretty late, all things considered, and just immediately had this natural talent. Incredible stuff. I wanted to share that story with you guys really quickly before going into his profile. Now, as a player, you're looking at a guy very technical player, close control, dribble, you name it, step overs, quick cuts inside, quick cuts outside. He'll do Cruyff cutbacks for those of you that are, the cutback with the back heel. You name it, this guy can do it. Incredible skill, change directions on a dime, number of ways too that he'll change direction on you. Not the most physical of players, but not necessary when you see a lot of the cases that he gets himself into. He's going to catch somebody off guard with one of his dribbles, a quick change of pace, turning directions. He's not usually in a lot of situations where he has to get into that physical tussle. So don't don't expect somebody at that level. And we're going to go more into that in a little bit. And of course, because of his quick movement, he's such a difficult guy to defend. He draws a lot of fouls too. As far as his downhill field upside, there's a high level of downfield upside with this player. He takes risks when he sits deep. He creates a lot, and this is a bit of a theme with this player. He's much more of a creator than a finisher. Not that he can't finish; it's just the modus operandi of this guy's, for lack of a better term, is that of a creator. When in the final third, you're going to see a lot of action outside the penalty area or just getting into that penalty area if he's driving in. He will draw defenders to him, and then if he gets by the defender or he draws defender to him, it doesn't get space. You'll see him play across him, but if he draws the defender successfully and gets by him, then you'll see him play a lot of passes. They have the tendency to go either across the penalty area or the edge of the penalty box. That's where you see a lot of his movement, a lot of the actions that he does. Maintains possession very well, very difficult to dispossess, as I mentioned, just because not because he's physical, but because he's just so difficult. He's so squirrely. You can't get a hold of him. He changes direction so fast. Very aggravating for defenders. One touch definitely has the capacity for it. I'm sure it's within his skill set. I just didn't see a lot of it, and we'll elaborate, of course, on this later. Uh, when it comes to build up, again, I'm going to touch on this more in depth when we get to that section of the deep dive into that segment. But he's both there. He are games where he's both very pivotal to build up and not pivotal at all to build up, and that's something that we're going to touch on as we go through the deep dive. So here we got a nice picture of his announcement here. ZYMER BYTYQI announced on deadline day for Olympiacos with a couple of hours to go. So very excited to have him. A lot of buzz around this player. Now, without further ado, we're going to get started with the good stuff here, boys. We're going to get started with the first set. You guys loved it when I brought it up. You had asked for it before, which is why we started doing it. The goal threat data and percentile data compared to everybody else in Turkey. Now, this is, of course, from this season, which is a little bit, we'll say, not regress, but it's not as good as it was last season. Last season, 8 goals, 7 assists in all competitions was it's not amazing, but it's not bad. I'd say it's above average for what you saw. He can contribute on both ends of the ball, and he did that in about 39 appearances too. So good stuff. Now, regarding goal threat, you're going to see that a lot of his goal threat is going to come from outside the penalty area or at the top of the penalty box. Vast majority of his opportunities, that were inside the penalty area were coming in stride when the ball's on the opposite end. So he's kind of running down this way, the ball's coming here, he's cutting into the box, ball gets played into him, and he's connecting with those shots. That's really the times where you see him go into the box. But most of the time when he's getting the ball himself in open play, his role, what he's doing is usually outside of that area. Uh, if the ball gets played in and around that penalty area and he has any kind of space at all, this guy is ripping a shot. I didn't see many scenarios, unless there was a defender right on him, where he was playing the ball backwards or kind of making moving rounds. If he has a step to take, he's ripping a shot. Not so good in the air, so don't expect a guy that's going to be winning anything crosses wise that in that manner. He's just not good in the air and very rarely gets into a situation like that. Um, the goals that he scored came from all sorts of opportunities, whether it was crosses that he's getting to in stride, rebounds, fast breaks. He has a pretty good shot accuracy in his career. It's usually in between 35-40%, which is pretty solid, all things considered. I don't expect him to be a leading goal scorer on the team. He never usually is. He's a guy that I want to compare to like Daniel Podense, not in their like for like profile and their characteristics of how they move and carry the ball, but in the way that they impacted the game. If you guys remember Daniel Podense's first season with us as Olympiacos, his end product wasn't so good, and it's not like he was doing a lot for us especially in the beginning, a lot of assists or a lot of things that people look for data on match sheets, right? But there was so much he did during the game for us, holding the play up, running at defenders, making something from nothing that is usually missed in a lot of these scenarios. So that's more of a comparison that I see him has for this team. Now, moving further, looking at assist creation and how he does create, his assist creation is going to come primarily from either crosses or passes that are played to like that top area of the penalty box or ahead of where the penalty area is. That's his formula. He runs down the wing, draws a defender, usually beats a defender 1v1. And if he beats the defender 1v1, he's usually playing a very nice ball. Usually, when another defender is coming to him, opening up a man, a striker, somebody that can take a shot, he then plays the ball to him. Or if he beats the defender and things are a little cluttered, you'll see him whip a nice cross or lob the ball directly into the penalty area. And he's got some pretty solid crossing accuracy as well. I was very surprised to see that, better crossing accuracy than almost anybody else that we have offensively on the team. And then otherwise, if the ball is getting crossed from those wider positions, or sorry, I should say, if he's getting those balls in the wider positions, he's either making a move or crossing it in. It's pretty simple. And he doesn't usually lose the ball in these scenarios. Very rarely did I see him get the ball stolen from a defender. Maybe he dribbled it out of bounds or mishits across, but he's quite effective in that scenario. Now, looking at the data here, this is percentile data compared to all other wingers, wide mids, and attacking mids in the Turkish league so far this season. And looking at his goal creation, there's a lot of stuff here that may worry some people. And I'm going to tell you not to panic, because yeah, this season isn't maybe as quick. He's moving a little bit slower in terms of his end product. As you can see, he's kind of below the 50th percentile on a few aspects, but the things that he's doing a little bit better on, you're looking at expected assists here, of course, and then the key pass. This is something I'm focusing on here. As I mentioned to you guys before, his end product is not so good, but his creative metrics are pretty decent. Key passes is one thing. A key pass, for those of you that may not remember, a key pass in Wisecout is the pass that leads directly to a shot. That pass goes directly to a shot by a player. So not all shot assists are key passes. This is one, the pass leads directly to it. Whether the player makes it or not is on them, but he has played the ball and given an opportunity from the ball that he played for the striker to make a direct shot on target. And he is up there, almost the 100th percentile. 99th percentile, basically, very close to it in the Turkish league in this regard. And this is something very important. It's a little bit different context than we saw with Serhikanos, who had a little bit better end product, a little bit better, I should say. It's on data wise, a lot better end product. Now, if we look at his data in the last season, his end product is better than so far this season. Like I said, it's a bit of a slow season, but I wanted to highlight here the point was more so his creativity, what he can offer creative wise, which is very much the case in any season where you look at it. Now, moving on, we have, oh, apologize for that. Not ready to go there yet. We're looking at possession and buildup. We're going to get into those player comparisons later. But first and foremost, we're going to get into this possession and buildup aspect of his profile. I already brought up the dribbling. He's got a very wide toolkit, hard to defend, and his dribble success over the course of his career, season over season, it's usually over 60%, which is pretty good. We see a lot of guys in the mid 50s, and that's something that we look at and say, okay, that's acceptable. But over 60%, that, like I told you guys, this guy is very effective, very good on the ball, and very difficult to dispossess. I also brought up the lack of physicality. He gets into so many situations where he just goes by a guy and there's no one on him. So it'll be very interesting to see how this translates in Greece. When the defenses lie a little deeper, things in Turkey are more open and people get a lot more physical. I didn't see a whole lot in buildup of him getting grabbed, pushed on, just maybe because of the way the league is, maybe because of how things were more open and how his role was with Konyaspor. But I'm very curious to see how this translates in Greece in a league that's going to be defenses sitting a lot deeper. He's going to be getting into a lot more physical tussles. Very curious to see how he handles all of that. Now in buildup, I did not see consistency in any one real specific aspect. Like I mentioned to you guys, there were some games I saw where he was a an outlet, and some games I saw where he was like the central guy in buildup. Not like Rafinha, obviously, because he's not a wing back, but along those lines. Outside of him constantly making great runs down the wing, there was no other consistent aspect of like how he operates on the field, which is really interesting. He definitely has the capacity, as I mentioned before in the profile, for one-touch passing, but maybe it was because this isn't a thing that they do a lot at Konyaspor. I just didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see a whole lot of one-touch involvement, at least where he was concerned. But he definitely, in the few scenarios I saw, can do it. He's very technical and has the capacity. So maybe in a more offensive scheme, he'll kind of fit in without too much requiring a lot of phase in, we should say. And there were matches he saw a lot more of the ball and is much more involved in buildup. There's some that he's quieter. He just sits on the wing. A lot of times you guys ask me, well, when you see that when that happens, is it because he's inconsistent? This could be something that is a result of tactics and coaching direction. That part's unclear. I'm just telling you guys what I saw on the tape, and what I saw on the tape is that sometimes he's involved in buildup, sometimes he's not. It could mean inconsistency with a player, and some of these more flair players like this have a lot of those inconsistent bouts. That's probably the only reason we get to see them. So it's going to be more about managing his ins and outs of form. But again, it's unclear whether this is the result of tactics or just him being an inconsistent player in that regard. We see plenty of ball progression by way of carrying the ball forward and passing it. Yeah, he does a lot of it in both ways. And wherever he goes, he's a leader in this regard when it comes to this type of progressive ball movement, as they say, getting the ball into that final third. And look at his build up and creation stats. You're going to see here in the first line, it's actually cut off a little bit. It's completed passes to penalty area. He's again in the 90th percentile. Dribbles completed, and then progressive carries, again, same thing in the 90th percentile. Now, progressive passes, he's a little bit below average compared to others in the Turkish league, but again, he still passes the ball forward. But in most scenarios, we saw him receiving the ball forward, and then carrying the ball forward, and that's the thing. And you're seeing that right here in the data. Very high percentile, getting balls forward, getting balls into the penalty area, carrying those balls forward. Very impressive stuff. Um, some of you are probably going to panic about everything else. We always talk about pass accuracy, especially with wingers. I wasn't panicking when I saw Sergio Canos's very low pass accuracy. I'm not panicking. His is right around the 50th percentile. He takes a lot of risks, so that comes with the territory in that regard. Again, not panicking. The things that we are looking at that we think are translatable to Greece are some of these other build-up metrics, things that we need. The dribbling, which we hoped was something Josh Bowler would give us, and he didn't. Well, Josh Bowler was a good dribbler, but we had concerns more about his ability to read the game and see the game. Of course, his ability to get the ball in the box, something we need volume of, and his ability to carry the ball forward, something that we've been lacking, something that Gary Rodriguez could inconsistently give us, but we need somebody to be able to do that a little bit more often than that. So moving forward, we have the defensive traits. And again, defensive traits for an offensive player like this, we're not super concerned with what he can and cannot actually do. We want to know, can this guy track back? Can this guy press? That's what we care about for our ski. He's not great in the air, not super impressive closing down players either. It was difficult for me to tell if Konyaspor was actually using a concerted press or like a high press because I didn't see him heavily involved. So it's difficult for me to say that this was a result of the formation or the tactics or because he just doesn't press. He seems to track back for the most part, at the very least, which is something that seems to be a given that we require from all of our players. You have to be able to track back. So at least he does that. The question for me is going to be, is this guy going to be functional in the press? Or are we going to have a very talented player that doesn't want to do this hard leg work and then we see him iced out? We'll have to wait and see what happens. Those types of things are the primary reasons that you see other wingers still in the team, like Yorgos Masouras, for example. They're not the most talented individuals, but they do the grunt work. They do the very hard work. So we'll have to see if this is something he can buy into, and if it's something that we can get that type of commitment from on a match level. So looking at his defensive stats, I already told you guys he's awful in the air. Literally 1-0 this year so far in the air. Defensive duels again, not the best closing players down. Decent amount of shots blocked, I guess, for a winger. But the part here this is also very good for us. Fouls committed. This isn't just so you guys aren't thinking inverse. This bar being at the 99th percentile, he's not committing a lot of fouls. It's the opposite. He's committing the least, which is good. This is at the very least doesn't look like it's going to be a head case on the field, not Usain Uba that's going to be drawing yellows and reds every other game. No, this guy seems to keep a cool head on his shoulders, and he seems to, at the very least, be calm, collected, and not drawing too much attention to himself in that regard. In fact, it's usually the opposite. He's the one drawing a lot of fouls. So at the very least, something that we'd like to see. So now that I've shown you guys, we've gone through kind of the player profile, we've gone through some of his percentile data compared to other players while he's been in Turkey. We're now going to do a player comparison. I'm going to do the same type of player comparison as I did before to Sergio Canos. I'm going to compare him to our current wingers, Yorgos Masouras and Gary Rodriguez. As you can see here, the story is a little bit different than Sergio Canos. Sergio Canos had a little bit better end product. And here you're seeing the end product from Yorgos Masouras and Gary Rodriguez, for the most part, is better. It's the creative statistics where he's outshining them. Shot assists and crosses. Gary Rodriguez, as I mentioned to you guys before, 5.38 crosses per 90 minutes. Nice volume, but his crossing accuracy is god-awful. 6%. He's completed 3 crosses of 50. ZYMER BYTYQI's crossing accuracy is almost 50%. It is remarkable. Rezin told you guys in the little teaser, he's a great crosser, very accurate crosser on the ball. And that's 100% true. And you can see that in the comparison here. So end product in terms of goals, not really his biggest thing. Of course, this year, like I said, it's a downslope. He does have some goals in him, but we're not bringing this player necessarily for his goals, but because of the other types of creative attributes that he has. Comparing his build-up and possession stats to Gary Rodriguez and Yorgos Masouras, this is where you start to see him shine a little bit more, or at least a lot closer to Gary. In terms of overall volume, very similar to the both of them. Pass accuracy, very similar to the both of them, outshining Gary. Progressive passes, we brought up that in the Turkish league, he is kind of under that 50th percentile, but he's getting a lot more progressive passes per 90 than Gary Rodriguez, Yorgos Masuras. It says a lot. Same thing with progressive carries, more on the low level of Gary Rodriguez. We've seen when Gary Rodriguez is healthy and doing well for us, how he can carry the ball forward for us. So this is something pretty remarkable. Dribbles completed, both a function of not just volume, but also his success, where Gary's is more a function of volume and not quite as much success. Touches in the penalty area, Gary and Masuras both have, I've mentioned before, a little bit better end product. This guy isn't going to be in the penalty area as often as he's going to be serving balls into the penalty area. And then another small thing here, almost double the volume of smart passes compared to Yorgos Masuras, double the volume of passes that break through the defensive line and create chances, create dangerous opportunities, not necessarily shots, but dangerous opportunities in the final third. Lastly, the defensive stats. I kind of already brought up to you guys that he's a little bit weaker, and you could see Masuras outshining him, at least defensively. Masuras outshines a lot of the wingers that we look at in the defensive category. He's more along the lines of Gary, in fact, outshining Gary in some of those areas. So nothing super surprising there, but more along the lines of Gary defensively, but shares a lot of those attributes offensively, plus a little bit more. Now that I've showed you guys a lot of the data, I've showed you the player comparisons regarding him. As always, we've come to the point where I deliver my verdict on the player. What do I think we're getting here? And this player is a little bit different mold than the first three transfers we brought in the winter. As I brought up in the previous deep dives, as I brought up in the previous deadline day special that we did, the first three signings, Rodinei, Sergi Canos, Ramon, not in particular order, those guys were fighters. Huge fighters. You saw their passion on the field, willing to get a little down and dirty. Guys that can get a little physical. But Dutsi's not necessarily that kind of fighter. He's a little bit of a different element, maybe a balance. We brought in one winger that's a fighter with great end product. We brought another winger with a lot of flair and creative ability. A little bit of balance here. And in my opinion, it's a great balance to have. You can't only bring in fighters. As much as I love the passion and work ethic, you got to have somebody that's creative there too. This guy has some great tools, an amazing toolkit. When I hear that we got him for less than 1 million, I understand why the Turkish fans of Konyaspor thought this was high rate robbery. I mean, this guy has mounds of potential, and he's 20, just turned 26. Got a lot of football still in him. The downside, I don't want to say it's a downside. The risk is we've seen players like this come forward, this kind of profile, this flair, this raw ability that turned out to be head cases, that turned out to be very inconsistent and end up not being a tool that the club has been able to use. I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case with this player because based on some of the other stats that we saw, I don't necessarily think he's a head case. The consistency measure, it's hard for me to telegraph because of some of the things I mentioned about the pressing, how sometimes he's involved in buildup and not, if that's part of the game plan or if that's part of him. We're going to have to wait and see how that turns off. But I'm leaning towards the idea that that's not the case. I'm leaning towards the idea that this guy's got talent and he can offer us something. At the very least, he's a great balance compared to what we already had. We didn't have any natural wingers that could give us great width or could make something from nothing. This guy 100% has the talent, has the ability to make something from nothing. Plus, he represents something that we don't get from any of our wingers right now, which is this creative instinct and creative technical ability. So this guy, in my opinion, is a winger, a type of signing that we haven't had, that we hoped we could get from Gary Rodriguez, but never got consistently because either he was out of form or injured. So I'm on this signing. And I think this is the first time in this window, any window, where I have been positive about all four signings. Yeah, Ramon, I told you guys was a project signing. I didn't expect anything big out of him this season, but I did see attributes that I thought would be valuable. And we started to see those in his substitute appearances: the aggression, his speed, willing to get forward with the ball. Maybe a project signing, but I was still positive on it. Rodinei, I knew would have instant impact. He's had instant impact. Sergi Canos is giving me David Fuster vibes, and if he's bringing that passion, I don't see how he's not successful with us. Bututsi is a similar case. He's got so much talent. And I've seen enough to say, okay, at the very least, even if he's not giving us end product, this guy's going to get the ball forward and do a lot of things to get us into the final third. So I can definitely seeing it being a case where maybe we're not looking at a guy that's going to get 10 goals or, I should say a total of double digit goal contributions for the rest of the season. That wouldn't surprise me. But I would be surprised if he's not in some way, at the very least, contributing to getting the ball forward. This is a guy that can bring people to the stadium because of his technique, because of his skill on the ball. I would be very surprised if by the end of the season, we're looking back at this guy and saying he's a code. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this is another great signing, a signing that brings balance, not end product, but creativity. In on paper and in theory, this is a fantastic signing. Especially his ceiling is incredibly high. So relatively low risk, you could say, because of the amount of money that we paid, and an extremely high potential for payoff with this player. So I'm a huge fan, and we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I really can't wait to see how this guy gels. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed yet another deep dive that is brought to you courtesy of Gate 7 International. We love doing this. We love continuing to do it. Again, hit the like and subscribe button if you continue to want to see this content, if you want to help support us and help us grow the red and white community and make it a bigger and bigger family than it already is. So once again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, this is Gate 7 International, by the fans, for the fans. Have a good one, guys.